it's always women. It's always Mia and friends, Jennie and the backup dancers, Soyeon and friends. It's always women. Maybe you guys should just focus on the fact that your groups are still promoting right now, because you never know when that shit's gonna end. Hi, welcome. So today's video is super exciting because we are going to be talking about favoritism in K-pop. So of course, we're going to talk about 3rd and 4th gen examples, but we're also going to be discussing their 2nd gen counterparts. I'm not really sure what I'm going to name it yet, but you will, of course, know before me because time isn't real. But seriously, I've been around the block. All of my faves have disbanded. Everything is fine. And as your second favorite K-pop boomer, I thought it would be a good idea to give my perspective on the issue. I definitely think there's a lot to learn about companies who push a certain member over the rest. Whether it's more screen time, more lines, more opportunities outside of the group, sometimes a member's favoritism is very obvious. And sometimes it works out fine, but other times it ends disastrously. Is that a word? And truthfully, it's a phenomenon that has been going on for a really long time. And you guys have been asking me to make a dedicated video ever since I released Everglow and Mia's favoritism. So here it is. So without further ado, let's get started. Actually, I'm going to stop you right there to remind you to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video with friends you don't have. Also, try to convince them to join my channel memberships. They're kind of cool. Like, you can get a cool heaven emoji beside your name. Just saying. I feel like the big 3 are often quite mentioned, and that is Jennie from BLACKPINK, Mia from Everglow, and Soyeon from G-Idol, or just Idol. Does anyone even pronounce it just Idol anymore? We all just collectively decided that it's okay to pronounce the G. And these 3 idols are probably 3rd and 4th gen's best examples when it comes to favoritism, and their companies really pushing them as centers of their groups despite being in a group. And I think that's where a lot of the anger comes from. How do you debut a group with many people and then blatantly decide to center one of them? So let's talk a little bit about Jennie. I mean, Jennie is probably the biggest modern day example of this happening. Back in the day, she was really accused of having the best outfits. She was the first one to get a solo, and the only member to get a solo, might I add. People would accuse her of being YG's princess, and though I feel like those accusations have somewhat died down, I feel like it just kind of sticks with her no matter what. But what's interesting about Jennie's case is that I don't particularly think that she necessarily has more lines or way more screen time. In fact, the accusations of her favoritism lie mostly in the fact that fans think that she has better fashion, which is actually quite subjective. And I think the second thing that people get mad when it comes to Jennie is the fact that she was the first and only member to have gotten a solo, and the fact that she got it so early in her career. But honestly, this is kind of a trend for YG anyways. I mean, if we do take a look at 21, we see that Bom got her solo the same year that 21 debuted. So I don't really think that Jennie getting a solo so early in her career is that crazy of a concept to have in mind. But then again, 21 and BLACKPINK treatment is very different. Because though Bom did get her solo, CL and Minzy also got a subunit and released the song Please Don't Go. And Dara also released a solo as well with Kiss. And all of this happened within the same year. And meanwhile, we're still waiting for a certain promise solo that I don't feel like rehashing right now. I rushed to put out a prediction video for her solo. Like, I rushed. It was stressing me out because I really wanted it to come out before her solo came out. And I ended up just clowning myself because that was 5 months ago. Heartbreak aside, I digress. Jennie's 2nd gen counterpart was indeed CL. And in fact, I remember a specific event where 21 had to evacuate Japan, and CL left first alone on a plane by herself, and the 3 other members left together on a separate plane. And I do remember fans being very upset about this. Like, why would you separate the members like that? Why is CL the one leaving all by herself? And people were accusing her of being, of course, YG's princess. And I mean, among other things, she did get more duets, more opportunities to do musical things outside of 21. And she was the fashionista of the group. But I mean, quite honestly, we all know that Dara had the most standout fashion. But oddly enough, she didn't receive as much hate as Jennie does for sticking out fashion-wise. Moving on to Soyeon, I've made videos about this in the past if you'd like to check them out after you're done with this one. But I mean, she's another idol who is accused of stealing the limelight. Because she takes such a huge part in the production of (G)I-DLE's music, people are more quick to accuse her of wanting to steal the limelight from the other members rather than saying like it's a company thing, when in reality Cube as well has been guilty of doing this, notably for 4 Minute. There's no doubt that she is talented. However, I'm just saying that maybe it's more of a company issue rather than one girl in a group trying to overshadow other members purposefully, if that makes sense. Because historically, the data shows it's a trend. Hyuna from 4 Minute's Favoritism did not go unnoticed. And 4 Minute, for those who don't know, was a 5-member girl group who were also under the same company, Cube Entertainment. They released hits such as Ha, which I honestly thought they were saying Soyeon, which is not the case. And of course, Volume Up, one of the most iconic 4 Minute songs in my opinion. And Hyuna definitely had the most opportunities out of all of the members. I mean, before even joining 4 Minute, she had the hype of having been a former member of the Wonder Girls. She did have other solos, but when she released Bubble Pop, it absolutely blew up and changed the K-pop world as we knew it. She also collabed with Psy. She had a duet with Hyunsung from Beast and formed Troublemaker, another super innovative project that, was innovative. She seemed to have always been centered in 4 Minute, no matter what. There was no way that you couldn't know about Hyuna. And, as just a casual 4 Minute stan, I guess you could say, I can only name 2 members. But you see, that's the interesting thing about second-gen K-pop. It wasn't really a big deal back then if you weren't an all-knowing being about the groups you listen to. You could just casually like a group, casually quote-unquote stan a group. But now I feel like there's a certain criteria, and if you don't adhere to that specific criteria, then you're a fake fan, then you're not welcome into the fandom, and you're not allowed to, listen to the music. I just feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping. Like, if I don't know every single member in order of age, height, or astrological sign, then I'm just not welcome in this community. But I mean, back to Hyuna's Favoritism. Kpop Shake actually made a video about 4 Minute and their disbandment, so if you want to check that out, she does talk a little bit about Hyuna's Favoritism as well. And I think she does a really good job at expressing, the societal animosity that people did have towards Hyuna and how they blamed her for 4 Minute's disbandment. So I'll leave a link down below to that video if you're interested in checking it out. After you're done with this one, of course. And then, of course, we have Mia, which is the most recent example as Everglow's screen time and line distribution has come into question. And in my video, we did look into the line distribution, and I mean, of course, it is pretty bad, but I also don't think it's the worst I've ever seen either. But that's just my opinion. Definitely would be curious to know what you think. In all of these examples, we have a member who is seemingly pushed by the company as the center of their group, despite being in a group. And people often argue, well, if you're going to only center one member, why didn't you make that member go solo? And I think there's a lot to kind of debunk with that statement. I mean, first of all, groups are so incredibly popular. And the more members you have in a group, I mean, the more chances are that someone will connect with one member more than others. I mean, it's just science. I don't fucking know. It's a little funny to me how we're all allowed to have a bias in the group. A member who we technically love more. But then if you're a solo stan, people throw a fit. And I expressed this earlier in the video that there is a lot more gatekeeping in 3rd gen and 4th gen than there ever really was in 2nd gen. Kpop Shake will agree that you don't have to love every single member. I mean, some people are casual listeners. Some people just literally don't care that much, and that's okay. Like, I can say that I loved 4 Minute, but did I know every single song? No. Did I listen to their entire discography? No, absolutely not. But I did appreciate the songs that they did put out, and I did follow them, casually. And I think that should be okay, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. But pushing every single member equally in terms of promotion is not possible and is not going to be beneficial for the company at the end of the day. I mean, if you have one member who you see is more popular than the other members, logistically, it makes sense to capitalize off that shit. And I don't think that the company necessarily wants to be malicious, but rather has a similar interest as you. And maybe it's more rooted in money, but I do think they just want to keep the group alive at the end of the day. But it does become an issue, especially in a group like BLACKPINK, who has 4 members. I mean, if you're showing favoritism towards 1 or 2 members in a 4-member group, it looks a lot worse and is a lot more noticeable. So the more we look into it, the more we can really see that these companies have done this before. And maybe these second-gen examples are proof that it has been done before. And maybe it's a little bit of a consolation, but at the same time, every single, second-gen group that I'm going to mention have disbanded. So maybe in that sense as well, it goes to show perhaps the future of our current faves. And another second-gen example is A and ChoColat.
You mean chocolate? Chocolat. You're not fucking French, Pete. It's called chocolate.
They were pushed as, K-pop's first biracial girl group. And if you'd like to check them out, I definitely recommend the song Black Tinkerbell. It is actually the song in the intro to my vlog channel, which you should also check out. And I loved them so much, but it was no secret that they were pushing Tia as their center, as their main everything. She got a contract with Leo Ellie. Her screen time was a lot more than the other members. You could definitely see the favoritism. I didn't really care. I still don't entirely care about favoritism, but I understand it is something that makes a lot of people angry. Another example, Suzy from Miss A, who was also pushed in many other facets, including acting. Does anyone remember Dream High? Ooh, that was kind of good. And again, I loved Miss A just as much as the next casual stan, but it was never really anything that I noticed until people in the modern day started talking about it. And like I said, maybe if you are a casual stan, it is something that won't really touch your heart as much as if you are a hardcore stan. But then again, if I do go back to the groups that I stand hardcore, let's say 21, I can definitely acknowledge that sometimes the line distribution wasn't the best, but at the same time, I didn't really care back then. It wasn't something that hurt me back then. And here's a little bit of advice from someone who has gone through a lot of, K-pop disbandments. Maybe you guys should just focus on the fact that your groups are still promoting right now, because you never know when that shit's gonna end. But of course, we cannot talk about favoritism in K-pop without bringing up a type of double standard. Because I don't know if you noticed, but every single example that I've given in this video are women. You never really hear that a boy group is insert idol here in Friends. It's always women. It's always Mia and Friends, Jennie and the backup dancers, Soyeon and Friends. It's always women. But it doesn't mean that certain members in boy groups aren't pushed to the forefront, aren't pushed as centers of their groups. It just shows that, societal reaction is a little bit different for boy groups. When is it not? At the end of the day, this is something that companies do, and I feel like they do it because it makes the most profit for them. If you see a member is really popular, you need to capitalize on that. And the biggest issue when companies do this is that they inevitably paint their female artists in the worst light possible, because we never associate men with trying to steal the limelight, with being, fame hungry. But we'll do exactly that in a heartbeat for an idol like Jennie or Hyuna. And I'm sure if you looked into it statistically and shit, you'd also find a correlation between the member who is the most pushed to the center and them also being the most hated member of that group. So yeah, generally, I really don't care about favoritism, and it's never really been something that I paid much attention to historically, because if you think about it, if your group is still together, is still promoting, there's a lot to appreciate. You can appreciate the styling, you can appreciate the fact that you're living through the era as it's happening. But if you're so focused on the little details that ultimately, in the grand scheme of it all, doesn't mean much, then you're losing out on precious time you could have with your idols. That sounds very Delulu of me, but I mean, I'm in a mood right now. But what I can say is that I do take issue with favoritism when it comes to people's reactions to it. Because most of the time, these public reactions to the accusations made towards these idols definitely do not paint them in the right light. And it's definitely most of the time, majority of the time, towards female idols. But the question remains, do you think this is something that ultimately leads to the downfall of the group? Do you think groups like BLACKPINK and (G)I-DLE and Everglow are ultimately going to fail because of their company's consistent need to center one of their members over the rest? Or do you think third and fourth gen is going to find a way to overcome this? I'd be curious to know in the comments down below. So that's basically it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share with friends you don't have, and join my channel memberships. And no, I'm not on BLACKPINK Marketplace on Twitter. Bye!